I'd like to welcome everybody to Season 3 of Check Your Shelf. We've got the Orwellian double feature. We're going to start it off with Animal Farm and then follow it up with 1984, a back-to-back set of certified heaters. In this season, we're going to discuss how absolute power can completely and totally destroy a man. We're going to discuss how the bourgeois class always wants to keep down the working class. And we're going to discuss why the government, the state, the man does not care about you. This book was banned in the United States for being pro-communism. This book was banned in the United Arab Emirates in 2012 for being un-Islamic. Printers in the UK were discouraged from printing it in order to not emblazon the USSR. But it's not banned here. Not on Check Your Shelf. Because that's what we do. We read what they don't want us to read. And it's better that way. So I'm gonna have to ask you to go check your shelf. What's up, all y'all beautiful young people? It's your boy, the dirty young hippie. Got a lot to talk about, man. A lot of shit happened. That's why you didn't get an episode on Monday. But you're gonna get one today, and you're gonna get one Monday, and you're gonna get one next Monday, and it's never gonna happen again. The Lord is my witness. But with that being said, I have a newfound respect for homeless people, and I tell you what, I know why they do crack and methamphetamine now. Man, our AC went out on Sunday, and it got to the point where it was about 99 degrees in the house, man. It was cooler in the garage and outside. We went and bought a $200 industrial fan just to try to keep us fucking sane, you know what I'm saying? So after like 3 or 4 days of that, before they could finally come in and get it fixed, man, it was taking everything I could just to like, I literally had a vertical tower fan laying on my chest at all times. You know, none of us got any more than 2 hours sleep for 3 days straight, and it was just, I couldn't clean, you know what I'm saying? All my dishes and dirty clothes just sat there for the weekend. It was crazy. Well, my weekend is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, but that being said, I also quit my job. I'm moving to Alabama. Got a really good opportunity to piggyback with some other creative people. Gonna be living in a house with a professional music producer and artist that I have played drums for a lot in the past, and a music video I just shot for him released. So if you guys want to type in Tyler Underwood, the song is called Right Thing, you can see the music video that I just shot. But yeah, with all that out the way, man, I'm moving across states. You know, I sweat so much that I gotta get a new mattress. Not really, but you know, I'm an exaggerator. I'm a storyteller. But yeah, we're here to read a book. We're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about a goddamn couple animals. And in this episode we met, in the last episode, I'm reading off the description from Anchor. In the last episode, we got to meet the farm owner, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is just a good representation of, you know, what the humans are, you know, the man, if you will, you know what I'm saying? He's the farm owner, and he's supposed to be taking care of all these animals. We also met Major. He's the old boar. He makes a commanding speech about man and how they're the root of all the animals' struggles. Man is evil, and they're hoarding all the fruits of the animals' generational labor. You know, how hard do these cows work? How hard do you work plowing the fields, the horses? You know, the pigs, we get fatter and fatter just to feed them, and yada yada yada. And then we found out that Major passes away the next day, or it might have been a little bit of time had passed, but he never got to see the revolution that he had talked about. But Mr. Jones lost a lot of money in a lawsuit, and the farm fell apart. He forgot to feed the animals for almost 2 days, and they all started to kind of riot, and they broke into the food barn and started just eating away. We also learned about the 7 commandments of animalism, and somebody stole some god dang milk, bro. But I don't know what we're gonna get into this time. This book's getting hot and heavy fast. So let's hop into this bitch. We on chapter 3. If you don't have the book, you can hop on YouTube and read along with us. We got the PDF up on the screen there for you. If you want to discuss it with us, or if you want to talk about any other kind of debauchery, you can hop right down there in the Discord. It's welcome to anybody. Just type that type that URL into your browser and come on in, say hello. I'd love to see you there. You can talk about anything you want to, man. There's no racism or dickism, only animalism, alright? Alright, y'all be good, man. I'm gonna see you on the inside of this book. Chapter 3, baby. Right before we hit chapter 3, we had there was a little meeting going around because some of the pigs had learned to read and write. So they're kind of discussing this with the rest of the animals, and the cows were like, oh man, what the hell? We haven't been milked in like a day. We are like about to burst. So the pigs went out and sent some buckets. They were able to milk them pretty successfully. They got 5 buckets of milk, and they're like, well, what's going to happen to it all? And Mr. Jones used to use it in some of our mash, but Napoleon's like, fuck the milk. We'll get to it eventually. We got to worry about the hay harvest. This shit's going to be huge. Come on, guys. So then, you know, by the time they go down to the hayfield to begin the harvest, by the time they came back, the milk had disappeared. So that's kind of where we left off before chapter 3. We're going to hop right into it. How they toiled and sweated to get the hay in, but their efforts were rewarded, for the harvest was an even bigger success than they had hoped. Sometimes the work was hard. The implements had been designed for humans and not for animals. And it was a great drawback that no animal was able to use any tool that involved standing on its hind legs, but the pigs were so clever that they could think of a way around every difficulty. As for the horses, they knew every inch of the field, and in fact understood the business of mowing and raking far better than Jones and his men had ever done. The pigs did not actually work, but directed and supervised the others. With their superior knowledge, it was natural that they should assume the leadership. Boxer and Clover would harness themselves to the cutter or the horse rake. No bits or reins were needed in these days, of course. And they would tramp steadily around and round the field with a pig walking behind, calling out, "Gee up, comrade," or "Whoa back, comrade," as the case might be. And every animal, down to the humblest, worked at turning the hay and gathering it. Even the ducks and hens toiled to and fro all day in the sun, carrying tiny wisps of hay in their beaks. In the end, they finished the harvest in 2 days less time than it had usually taken Jones and his men. Moreover, it was the biggest harvest that the farm had ever seen. There was no wastage whatever. Probably should be whatsoever, right? But we know how these old folks don't know how to talk. Right, J.D. Salinger? There was no wastage whatever. The hens and ducks with their sharp eyes had gathered up the very last stock, and not an animal on the farm had stolen so much as a mouthful. Well, isn't that nice? Well, isn't that special? All through that summer, the work of the farm went like clockwork. The animals were happy as they had never conceived it possible to be. Every mouthful of food was an acute positive pleasure. Now that it was truly their own food, produced by themselves and for themselves. Uh-oh, careful. That's a socialism thing, guys. Careful, they're trying to trick ya. Every mouthful of food was an acute positive pleasure now that it was truly their own food, produced by themselves and for themselves. Like FUBU, baby. Man, did I just really do 2? Man, I shouldn't have done 2 tags on the same joke. That's whack. Not doled out to them by a grudging master. With the worthless, parasitical human beings gone, there was more for everyone to eat. There was more leisure, too. Inexperienced though the animals were. Why is that? That should have been written. I don't like it. I don't like it. Write it different, dude. There was more leisure, too, inexperienced though the animals were. They met with many difficulties, for instance. Later in the year, when they harvested the corn, they had to tread it out in the ancient style and blow away the chaff with their breath, since the farm possessed no threshing machine. But the pigs, hair in my mouth, but the pigs with their cleverness, and Boxer with his tremendous muscles, always pulled them through. Boxer was the admiration of everybody. He had been a hard worker even in Jones's time, but now he seemed more like 3 horses than 1. There were days when the entire work of the farm seemed to rest on his mighty shoulders. From morning to night, he was pushing and pulling, always at the spot where the work was the hardest. He had made an arrangement with one of the cockerels to call him in the mornings half an hour earlier than anyone else, and would put in some volunteer labor at whatever seemed to be most needed before the regular day's work began. His answer to every problem, every setback was, I will work harder, which he had adopted as his personal motto. But everyone worked according to his capacity. The hens and the ducks, for instance, saved 5 bushels of corn at the harvest by gathering up the stray grains. What? Did I not process that? But everyone worked according to his capacity. The hens and ducks, for instance, saved 5 bushels of corn at the harvest by gathering up the stray grains. So I'm guessing he's just running around spilling a whole bunch, and so they're picking up what he spills. I don't know, whatever. Nobody stole. Nobody grumbled over his rations. The quarreling and biting and jealousy, which had been normal features of life in the old days, had almost disappeared. Nobody shirked. Well, almost nobody. Molly, it was true, was not good at getting up in the mornings and had a way of leaving work early on the ground that there was a stone in, oh, should have been a comma there, right? Had a way of leaving work early on the ground that there was a stone in her hoof, and the behavior of the cat was somewhat peculiar. It was soon noticed that when there was work to be done, the cat could never be found. She would vanish for hours on end and then reappear at meal times or in the evening after work was over, as though nothing had happened. But she always made such excellent excuses and purred so affectionately that it was impossible not to believe her good intentions. Old Benjamin, the donkey, seemed quite unchanged since the rebellion. He did his work slow in the same slow, obstinate way that he had done it in Jones's time, never shirking and never volunteering for extra work either. So what they're doing right here, I think they're setting up for the argument that some people work harder than others and some people do a lot less work than others, and why is everyone suspected? Man, my vocabulary is good as fuck, but sometimes I just be saying the wrong words. Everyone's kind of it's kind of understood that everyone's going to get the same amount of outcome in socialism, right? Like that's what everyone seems to think is what socialism is about, but that's just not the case. It's about the workers having the means of production, which is what we're seeing, happen in front of us. It's not about what the West or what the common media might be describing socialism as, but they are setting this up for that argument. So you got old Benjamin, who's never changed since the rebellion. He's just going to work like he always has, because that's what you do, man. You just go to work. That's just, I'm a worker. We work. And then you got, what's his name, who's working harder, Boxer working harder, and Molly not good at getting up and leaves early and hangs out with the cat. Keep that in mind, just to keep that in the little back of your skull. About the rebellion and its results, he would express no opinion. This is old Benjamin. He would express no opinion, and when asked whether he was not happier now that Jones was gone, he would say only, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey." And the others had to be content with his cryptic answer. On Sundays, there was no work. Breakfast was an hour later than usual, and after breakfast, there was a ceremony which was observed every week without fail. First came the hoisting of the flag. Snowball had found in the harness room an old green tablecloth of Mrs. Jones's and had painted it on a roof and had painted on it a hoof and a horn in white. I hate the way he writes. He just did it twice. Snowball had found in the harness room an old green tablecloth. So I feel like if it was more efficient or whatever, like how we write in modern times, it would be in the harness room, Snowball had found an old green tablecloth and he painted on it, and had painted on it, and he had painted on it. Well, I guess that one's correct and I'm just stupid. And painted a hoof and a horn on it in white. I guess they're both right. It just seems, I just slipped up on it, so I want to make fun of it. This flag was run up the flagstaff in the farmhouse garden every Sunday morning. The flag was green, Snowball explained, to represent the green fields of England, while the hoof and the horn signified the future republic of animals which would arise when the human race had finally been overthrown. After the hoisting of the flag, all the animals trooped into the big barn for a general assembly which was known as the meeting. Here, the work of the coming week was planned out and resolutions were put forward and debated. It was always the pigs who put forward the resolutions. The other animals understood how to vote, but could never think of any resolutions of their own. Snowball and Napoleon were by far the most active in the debates, but it was noticed that these two were never in agreement. Whatever suggestion either of them made, the other could be counted on to oppose it. Even when it was resolved, a thing no one could object. Come out, ribbity ribbity, bow bow. A thing no one could object to in itself. To set aside the small paddock behind the orchard as a home for the rest of. Fuck me. So they're opposing each other even when it was resolved, a thing that no one could object to in itself. To set aside the small paddock behind the orchard as a home of rest for animals who were past work. There was a stormy debate over the correct retiring age for each class of animal. The meeting always ended with the singing of Beasts of England, and the afternoon was given up to recreation. That's interesting that even the two pigs who are like, they're I'm saying it's funny that this happened this way, like these are real pigs, but it's not a funny coincidence. He wrote it that way on purpose, but it's interesting that that's he's setting it up really well already. I don't remember this book moving this quickly either. The pacing of this book seems really quick. I feel like I'm almost fucking out of breath. So much is happening so quickly. The pigs had set aside the harness room as a headquarters for themselves. Here, in the evenings, they studied blacksmithing, carpentry, and other necessary arts from books which they had brought out of the farmhouse. Snowball also busied himself with organizing the other animals into what he called animal committees. He was indefatigable? What the fuck word is that? Dr. Goo, you want to help me out, brother? Hi, it's me, Dr. Goo. You want to just come on over here and type it in and press the enter button. I'll tell you what to do. Indefatigable.
Indefatigable.
Indefatigable. Was that a black chick?
Indefatigable.
That's, bruh. That is a person of color, bro. That is a black or
indefatigable.
That's nice. I did not expect that, and I'm a little bit speechless. That's fire, but it fucking means of a person or their efforts persisting tirelessly. Thanks, Dr. Goog. Oh yeah, no problem. Dr. Goog is like a mixture of fucking Sylvester Stallone and a nerd. I don't understand where these voices come from, and they're mad inconsistent because I don't write them down. He was indefatigable. What'd she say? Indefatigable. He was indefatigable at this. Persistently tireless. Snowball busied himself with organizing animals into the animal committees. He was indefatigable. I keep forgetting it. It doesn't want to roll off my tongue like that. He formed the Egg Production Committee for the hens, the Clean Tails League for the cows, the Wild Comrades Re-Education Committee. The object of this was to tame the rats and the rabbits, the Whiter Wool Movement for the sheep, and various others, besides instituting classes in reading and writing. On the whole, these projects were a failure. The attempt to tame the wild creatures, for instance, broke down almost immediately. They continued to behave very much as before, and when treated with generosity, simply took advantage of it. The cat joined the re-education committee and was very active in it for some days. She was seen one day sitting on top of a roof and talking to some sparrows who were just out of her reach. She was telling them that all animals were now comrades and that any sparrow who chose could come and perch on her paw, but the sparrows kept their distance. So some people are capable of using these tools to their advantage. Some people have ill intentions, even in what's supposed to be a idealistic sort of not democracy, system of government. So even though we're supposed to be all for the people, there are going to be people who take advantage of that. It's the same in any system, the same way we have a large number of people, actually kind of a small handful of people, really exploiting the capitalism system right now for their own benefit, just the same way as the cat would be doing in this instance, right? The reading and writing classes, however, were a great success. By the autumn, almost every animal on the farm was literate in some degree. As for the pigs, they could already read and write perfectly. The dogs learned to read fairly well, but were not interested in reading anything but the 7 Commandments. Muriel, the goat, could read somewhat better than the dogs and sometimes used to read to others in the evenings from scraps of newspaper which she found on the rubbish heap. Benjamin could read as well as any pig, but never exercised his faculty, so as far as he knew, he said, there was nothing worth reading. Clover learnt the whole alphabet. I wonder if he's Southern. Oh no, he's English, right? Orwell? I don't know. Dr. Gook? No, get out of here, Dr. Gook. Oh, let me tell you. Shut up. Get out of here. Clover learnt the whole alphabet but could not put words together. Boxer could not get beyond the letter D. He would trace out A, B, C, D in the dust with his great hoof, and then would stand staring at the letters with his ears back, sometimes shaking his forelock, trying with all his might to remember what came next and never succeeding. On several occasions, indeed, he did learn E, F, G, H, but by the time he knew them, it was always discovered that he had forgotten A, B, C, and D. Finally, he decided to be content with the first 4 letters and used to write them out once or twice every day to refresh his memory. Molly refused to learn any but the 6 letters which spelt her own name, and she would form these very neatly out of pieces of twig, and would then decorate them with a flower or two and walk around admiring them. We're supposed to be making like character trait connections with these people, right? Like we're supposed to be forming opinions and connections with these animals based on their character traits, right? Is that what they're doing? None of the other animals on the farm could get further than the letter A. It was also found that the stupider animals, such as the sheep, hens, and ducks, were unable to learn the 7 Commandments by heart. After much thought, Snowball declared that the 7 Commandments could, in effect, be reduced to a single maxim, namely, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. This, he said, contained the essential principle of animalism. Whoever thoroughly grasped it. Leave me alone, man. Whoever thoroughly grasped it would be safe from human influences. The birds at first objected, since it seemed to them that they also had 2 legs, but Snowball proved to them that this is not so. A bird's wing, comrades, is an organ of propulsion and not of manipulation. Therefore, it should be regarded as a leg. The distinguishing mark of man is the hand, the instrument with which he does all his mischief. The birds did not understand Snowball's long words, but they accepted his explanation, and all the humbler animals set to work to learn the new maxim by heart. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. It was inscribed on the end wall of the barn, above the 7 Commandments and in bigger letters. When they had once got it by heart, the sheep developed a great liking for this maxim, and often as they lay in the field, they would all start bleating, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and keep it up for hours on end, never growing tired of it. Napoleon took no interest in Snowball's committees. He said that the education of the young was more important than anything that could be done for those who were already grown up. It happened that Jessie and Bluebell had both whelped soon after the hay harvest, giving birth to them 9 sturdy puppies. As soon as they were weaned, Napoleon took them away from their mothers, saying that he would make himself responsible for their education. He took them up into a loft which could only be reached by a ladder from the harness room, and there kept them in such seclusion that the rest of the farm soon forgot their existence. Oof. Damn, that's creepy. So, it's hard to tell if Snowball or Napoleon's the bad guy right now, right? Like, that's weird to say that one's good and one's bad, but so Snowball up here is is the dude who's trying to reduce the 7 commandments into the new maxim, which is now bigger than the 7 commandments, right? So he's bad for that, but Napoleon's out here kidnapping people, trying to essentially brainwash them, right? Like he's gonna come out here and do the whole, you learn what I want you to learn and there's nothing else to learn, you hear me, boy? The mystery of where the milk went was soon cleared up. It was mixed every day into the pig's mash. The early apples were now ripening. Is that all we're going to talk about the milk for? That's it? That was a pretty big... Okay, we're going to go back into it. Okay, I think. The early apples were now ripening, and the grass of the orchard was littered with windfalls. The animals had assumed as a matter of course that these would be shared out equally. Littered with windfalls. I'm okay. The grass of the orchard was so windfalls of apples is what I'm guessing is, yeah. So windfalls is an amount, not a thing. Got it. One day, however, the order went forth that all the windfalls were to be collected. What the fuck? Dr. Goog. Yeah. How can I help you? I'm about to type Dr. Goog again, bro. It's a fucking joke now. Windfalls. I was gonna see if it was a type of apple, but let's see. Oh yeah, an apple or other fruit blown down from a tree or bush by the wind. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry you can't see the whole thing on screen, guys. I have my thing cropped. Darn it. But we don't need you right now, Dr. Goog. Get out of here. You bitch. So windfalls are apples that have been blown downtown. All the windfalls were to be collected and brought to the harness room for the use of the pigs. At this, some of the other animals murmured, but it was no use. All the pigs were in full agreement on this point, even Snowball and Napoleon. Squealer was sent to make the necessary explanations to the others. Comrades, you do not imagine, I hope, that we the pigs are doing this in spirit of selfishness and privilege. Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. I dislike them myself. Our sole object in taking these things is to preserve our health. Milk and apples, this has been proved by science, comrades, contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. We pigs are brain workers. The whole management and organization of this farm depends on us. Day and night, we're watching over your welfare. Is it for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples? It is for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples. Do you know what would happen if we pigs failed in our duty? Jones would come back. Yes, Jones would come back. Surely, comrades, cried Squealer almost pleadingly, skipping from side to side and whisking his tail. Surely there's no one among you who wants to see Jones come back. Now, if there was one thing that the animals were completely certain of, it was that they did not want Jones back. When it was put to them in this light, they had no more to say. The importance of keeping the pigs in good health was all too obvious. So it was agreed without further argument that the milk and the windfall apples, and also the main crop of apples when they ripened, should also be reserved for the pigs alone. Oh, I like that little icon right there. I wonder if that's for the publishing company or for the book. Nice. So earlier we're kind of looking at people like Molly and the cat as the bad guys, right? Like I think I even brought up how the cat would be taking advantage of the system. But now it's looking like the pigs are kind of running away with the amount of power that they've accumulated. And we got to remember that one of the main themes of this book is how absolute power can corrupt a man, right? So keep that in mind too. So maybe the pigs aren't good guys after all, right? What do you guys think? Oh, tell me in the comments. Yeah, tell me in the comments what you think about the pigs. Oh, I should be a real YouTuber instead of a podcaster, right? Nah, well, this is, I got viewers on every platform. I can't just selfishly plug the YouTube all the time, even though you can see, you know, my streaming stuff there, drumming stuff there, live music, my music videos. I mean, it's pretty lit if you just go to Ascend.Create on YouTube and find that shit. But yeah, so let's keep in mind these, both of these pigs might be pieces of shit too as we go into chapter 4. Chapter 4. By the late summer, the news of what had happened on Animal Farm had spread across half the county. Every day, Snowball and Napoleon sent out flights of pigeons whose instructions were to mingle with the animals on neighboring farms. Tell them the story of the rebellion, and teach them the tune of Beasts of England. Most of this time, Mr. Jones had spent sitting in the tap room. Mr. Jones had spent sitting in the tap room of the Red Lion at Willingdon, complaining to anyone who would listen of the monstrous injustice he had suffered in being turned out of his property by a pack of good-for-nothing animals. The other farmers sympathized in principle, but they did not at first give him much help. At heart, each of them was secretly wondering whether he could not somehow turn Jones's misfortune into his own advantage. It was lucky that the owners of the two farms which had adjoined Animal Farm were on permanently bad terms. One of them, which was named Foxwood, was a large, neglected, old-fashioned farm, much overgrown by woodland. With all its pastures worn out and its hedges in a disgraceful condition, its owner, Mr. Pilkington, was an easygoing... Oh, I thought that was a large-ass run-on sentence. Its owner, Mr. Pilkington, was an easygoing gentleman farmer who spent most of his time in fishing or hunting according to the season. The other farm, which was called Pinchfield, Foxwood and Pinchfield, was smaller and better kept. Its owner was a Mr. Frederick, a tough, shrewd man, perpetually involved in lawsuits and with a name for driving hard bargains. These two disliked each other so much that it was difficult for them to come to any agreement, even in defense of their own interests. Oh, so they're not at bad arms with the Animal Farm, they're at bad arms with each other. It was lucky that the owner of the two farms adjoined were on permanently bad terms. I read that like they were on bad terms with Animal Farm. They don't like each other. Okay. Nevertheless, they were both thoroughly frightened by the rebellion on Animal Farm. So even though they don't agree, they're still scared of socialism. So this might be an allegory. Allegory, dude, imagery. What the fuck? You know what I'm talking about. This might be alluding to the fact that maybe these two other farms are maybe say China and Russia versus say Germany and France, or you know what I'm saying, like just two people who might be politically and historically considered enemies are both still scared of the Red Scare type shit, right? Like they're both scared of the revolution coming and taking them down too, despite them being enemies and not agreeing on anything. They're still scared of this quote unquote common enemy, right? Nevertheless, they were both thoroughly frightened by the rebellion on Animal Farm and very anxious to prevent their own animals from learning too much about it. At first, they pretended to laugh to scorn the idea of animals managing a farm for themselves. The whole thing would be over in a fortnight, they said. If I was standing up, if I knew the dance, I'd fucking bust out a Fortnite dance so hard I'd start flossing on y'all, right? Oh boy. I should have too, just to make that a YouTube clip. I should have done it. Fuck. Maybe next time. If I stand up, you'll just like basically see my dick. Like it's just dick level. Like it's like belly button, fucking pubic hair level. It's bad. And I'm not wearing pants. I'm just kidding, I am. No, I'm not. I'm wearing shorts. Haha, I got you twice. The whole thing will be over in a fortnight, they said. They put it about that the animals on the manor farm, they insisted on calling it the manor farm and would not tolerate the name animal farm. They put it about that the animals on the farm were perpetually fighting amongst themselves and were also rapidly starving to death. When time passed and the animals had evidently not starved to death, Frederick and Pilkington changed their tune and began to talk of the terrible wickedness that now flourished on Animal Farm. Terrible wickedness, huh? Careful, here comes satanic, right? It was given out that the animals there practiced cannibalism, tortured one another with red-hot horseshoes, and had their females in common. Funny that it would be cannibalism, right? So is it hens eating hens and sheep eating sheep, or is it dogs eating rats? Because they're all animals and they're all considered equals. I wonder where the guidelines. Gotta sneeze. Wow. Keep that one in. That was a strong one. What was I talking about? But I sneezed, fucking refreshed my brain. I don't even remember what I was talking about. Oh yeah, so cannibalism. They tortured one another with red-hot horseshoes and had their females in common. It kind of sounds lit. It sounds like body modification and polyamory, right? I mean, that kind of sounds fire. And let's be honest, I think if somebody was ethically sourcing cannibalism, like if they lost their leg in a motorcycle accident and like saved it and cooked it on their Traeger grill, I'd be like, if he threw a cookout and like let me know what was up, he'd be like, hey man, look, I'm gonna cook my own leg. I'm gonna season it up. It's gonna be marinated. We're gonna fuck it up. I'm gonna make some rice and some chicken wings and some burgers and stuff. If you don't want to try it, just come out. But I would really love you to eat my leg. I'd be like, I think I'd fuck around and try it, man. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Is that gonna get me kicked off of YouTube that I said I'd eat a dude's leg? Please don't report me. I love you, leg. And this is what came of rebelling against the laws of nature, Frederick and Pilkington said. However, these stories were never fully believed. Rumors of a wonderful farm where the human beings had been turned out and the animals managed their own affairs. It's funny because being turned out, I think, is a sort of hip hop phrase for selling puss. Dr. Goo, what you got for that? It's kind of out of my league, but I think we can get you something. Turned out, Urban Dictionary. You like how I didn't type Dr. Goog that time, buddy? Yes, you're really learning, sure. Turned out, prison slang, the process by which a male inmate through violent coercion is transformed into a female typical or passive sexual role. Bro, we out here. Thanks, Dr. Goog. Oh, I forgot to turn it on. Damn it. I want to get better at this one day. Dr. Goog, turned out, Urban Dictionary. Oh, thanks, Julia. Oh, fuck, I'm fucking up my voices. Yeah, somebody save me. All right, anyway. Turned out, where the human beings had been turned out and the animals managed their own affairs, continued to circulate in vague and distorted forms, and throughout that year, a wave of rebelliousness ran through the countryside. That's awesome. So the rumors were circulating, and other farms getting close that were close to this farm have also started to kind of rebel and revolutionize their labor. Bulls, which had always been tractable, suddenly turned savage. Sheep broke down hedges and devoured the clover. Cows kicked the pail over. Hunters refused their fences and shot their riders onto the other side. Bruh, I about paused like the fucking, like the goddamn horses had some fucking guns. Isn't that crazy? What's wrong with me? Above all, the tune and even the words of Beasts of England were known everywhere. It had spread with astonishing speed. The human beings could not contain their rage when they heard this song, though they pretended to think it was merely ridiculous. They could not understand, they said, how even animals could bring themselves to sing such contemptible rubbish. Any animal caught singing it was given a flogging on the spot. That's like, you know, a beating, a whipping or whatever. And yet the song was irrepressible. The blackbirds whistled it on the hedges, the pigeons cooed it in the elms, and it got into the din of the smithies and the tune of the church bells. And when the human beings listened to it, they secretly trembled, hearing in it a prophecy of their future doom. And now just to kind of reiterate, humans in this very metaphorical, allegorical, this is, you know, obviously very, you have to really read into the lines, right? Humans are the man, the system, the government, the elite, the 1%, right? And animals are representing all of humanity in different ways. So, you know, for example, quote unquote, right? The pigs are the superiors, and that would be like people who think intelligence and ability to organize and ability to lead is the be all end all of what it means to be human. And then you've got people like the dogs and the horses and the donkeys and the boars, Boxer and all them, like they're just, you know, regular ass working people, upper middle class or whatever. And then you've got people like Molly who are supposed to be the lazy sort of leeches of society, and you've got people like the cat who are more like the thieves and the hustle, not the hustlers, because hustle is not supposed to be negatively connotated, but the cat in this story is supposed to be like sort of a sketchy, shady, thievy kind of grifter type, right? So early in October, when the corn was cut and stacked, and some of it was already threshed, a flight of pigeons came whirling through the air and alighted in the yard of Animal Farm in the wildest excitement. Jones and all his men, with a half a dozen others from Foxwood and Pinchfield, had entered the 5-barred gate and were coming up the cart track that led to the farm. They were all carrying sticks, except Jones, who was marching ahead with a gun in his hands. Obviously, they were going to attempt to recapture the farm. This had long been expected, and all preparations had been made. Snowball, who had studied an old book of Julius Caesar's campaigns, which he had found in the farmhouse, was in charge of the defensive operations. He gave his orders quickly, and in a couple of minutes, every animal was at his post. As the human beings approached the farm buildings, Snowball launched his first attack. All the pigeons, to the number of 35, flew to and fro over the men's heads and muted upon them from midair. And while the men were dealing with this, the geese, who had been hiding, of course the fucking geese are on the front lines, bro. Get out of here. The geese, who had been hiding behind the hedge. Lenge is what I wanted to say, I think. The geese who had been hiding behind the hedge. Well, it's because legs is right underneath it, that's why. The geese who had been hiding behind the hedge rushed out and pecked viciously at the calves of their legs. However, this was only a light skirmishing maneuver. Damn, do English people be putting O's in? What the hell, bro? UK, you gotta get... It's more than UK, it's probably all of Europe, huh? These fucking guys. You gotta quit with that. Manohivier. It's probably a French word, though. However, this was only a light skirmishing when... Oh, if you're not watching on YouTube or reading along or just listening, maneuver is spelled Manoeuvre in this book. However, this was only a light skirmishing maneuver intended to create a little disorder, and the men easily drove off the geese with their sticks. Snowball now launched his second line of attack. Muriel, Benjamin, and all the sheep with Snowball at the head of them rushed forward and prodded and butted the men from every side, while Benjamin turned around and lashed at them with his small hooves. But, once again, the men with their sticks and hobnailed boots were too strong for them. And suddenly, at a squeal from Snowball, which was the signal for retreat, all the animals turned and fled through the gateway into the yard. The men gave a shout of triumph. They saw, as they imagined, their enemies in flight, and they rushed after them in disorder. This is just what Snowball had intended. As soon as they were well inside the yard, the 3 horses, the 3 cows, and the rest of the pigs who had been lying in ambush in the cowshed suddenly emerged in their rear, cutting them off. Snowball now gave the signal for the charge. He himself dashed straight for Jones. Jones saw him coming, raised his gun, and fired. The pellets scored bloody streaks along Snowball's back, and a sheep dropped dead. Without halting for an instant, Snowball flung his 15 stone against Jones's legs. Anybody want to guess how much 15 stones is? Dr. Goog, I need you, baby. Oh, let me guess. You don't know how much a fucking stone is? That's real mature. I keep wanting to mix up what I just did for what's his name? Fucking Snowball, or no, that Squealer. Whoever that bitch ass pig was that was coming down kissing ass. But yeah. But now what am I looking up, man? My brain's fucked. 15 stone. Oh, you don't know how much 15 stone is, you silly American. Damn it, I typed in Dr. Goog again. 15 stone in pounds. 210. 210 pound piggy. Snowball flung his 15 stone against Jones's legs. Jones was hurled into a pile of dung and his gun flew out of his hands. Oh, please let the animals get a gun, bro, right? Let's go. But the most terrifying spectacle of all was Boxer, rearing up on his hind legs and striking out with his great iron-shod hooves like a stallion. His very first blow took a stable lad from Foxwood on the skull and stretched him lifeless in the mud. At the sight, several men dropped their sticks and tried to run. Panic overtook them, and the next moment, all the animals were together chasing them round and round the yard. They were gored, kicked, bitten, trampled on. There was not an animal on the farm that did not take vengeance on them after his own fashion. Even the cat suddenly leapt off a roof onto the cowman's shoulders and sank her claws in his neck, at which he yelled horribly. At a moment when the opening was clear, the men were glad enough to rush out of the yard and make a bolt for the main road. And so, within 5 minutes of their invasion, they were gone ignominious. God damn. Is this a fucking triple Dr. Goog right now? Dr. Goog, ignominious.
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 That's not the same. That's not that same black bitch from before, bro. That's different.
Ignominious.
It's still a chick though. Now I feel like I want to go on a pronunciation dive. Ignominious, deserving or causing public disgrace or shame. Oh no, don't show my Facebook. That's bad. Get out of here. Within 5 minutes of their invasion, they were in ignominious retreat by the same way as they had come, with a flock of geese hissing after them and pecking at their calves all the way. All the men were gone except one. Back in the yard, Boxer was pawing with his hoof at the stable lad who lay face down in the mud trying to turn him over. The boy did not stir. "He is dead," said Boxer sorrowfully. "I had no intention of doing that. I forgot that I was wearing iron shoes. Who will believe that I did not do this on purpose?" "No sentimentality, comrade!" cried Snowball, from whose wounds the blood was still dripping. "War is war. The only good human being is a dead one." "I have no wish to take a life. Not even human life," repeated Boxer, and his eyes were full of tears. Where's Molly?" Molly, in fact, was missing. For a moment there was great alarm. It was feared that the men might have harmed her in some way or even carried her off with them. In the end, however, she was found hiding in her stall with her head buried among the hay in the manger. She had taken to flight as soon as the gun went off. And when the others came back looking for her, it was to find that stable lad who was in fact only stunned had already recovered and made off. So they didn't kill anybody. They didn't kill anybody. And it's nice to see that Boxer, you know, the big strong steed that's working harder than everybody else, who was the big fucking stallion, strong boy tank, he's a little bit of a softie. That's pretty nice. Oh damn, my cup is about the same color as my green screen. Apparently you can just, you wanna see through my face? Oh, did you miss that visual joke? Maybe you should follow me on YouTube, pussy. The animals had now reassembled in the wildest excitement, each recounting his own exploits in the battle at the top of his voice. An impromptu celebration of the victory was held immediately. The flag was run up and Beasts of England was sung a number of times. Then the sheep who had been killed was given a solemn funeral, a hawthorn bush being planted on her grave. At the graveside, Snowball made a little speech, emphasizing the need for all animals to be ready to die for Animal Farm if need be. The animals decided unanimously to create a military decoration, Animal Hero, First Class, which was conferred there and then on Snowball and Boxer. What does conferred mean? Because I don't really understand it in that context. Conferred, like they all talked about it together, and then on Snowball and Boxer, whatever. It consisted of a brass medal. They were really some old horse brasses which had been found in the harness room to be worn on Sundays and holidays. So they made a little brass medal for, I'm not really sure if it's for all three of them or just for the sheep. Oh, okay, so it looks like Snowball and Boxer got the first class. And there was also Animal Hero Second Class, which was conferred posthumously on the dead sheep. There was much discussion as to what the battle should be called. In the end, it was named the Battle of the Cowshed, since that was where the ambush had been sprung. Mr. Jones's gun had been found lying in the mud. Yes, knew it. Yeah, I remember this book. And it was known that there was a supply of cartridges in the farmhouse. It was decided to set the gun up at the foot of the flagstaff, like a piece of artillery, and to fire it twice a year. Once, on October the 12th, the anniversary of the Battle of the Cowshed, and once on Midsummer Day, the anniversary of the rebellion. Nice, so we got our first sort of uprising against Animal Farm, and we have seen that strength in numbers and, you know, willingness to defend what you have created is much stronger than the animosity of the opposers. Right? Is that what we learned? What did we learn from there? I don't remember. Don't listen to me. Try to burn through chapter 5 so this isn't an hour and a half long episode. Chapter 5. As winter drew on, Molly became... Oh, I can just tap the arrow. I don't have to use my mouth. Mouth? Mouse. Was that an opposite lisp? Imagine having an opposite lisp, bro. Every time you say s, it just comes out. Wait, is that a real lisp? Lisp? Fuck, I'm dumb. So, I was walking down the street. That's just a French dude. If all your THs or S's, you're just a French dude. I can't think of any other TH words. This? Go over there? You are looking so thin. What if you're a French dude with an accent, though? I ain't even gonna try it, bro. Comedy. Chapter 5. As winter drew on, Molly became more and more troublesome. She was late for work every morning and excused herself by saying that she had overslept, and she complained of mysterious pains, although her appetite was excellent. So we're kind of setting the stage for what looks like we're gonna get into some of the more intricate and subtle complications of animalism. On every kind of pretext, she would run away from work and go to the drinking pool, where she would stand foolishly gazing at her own reflection in the water. But there were also rumors of something more serious. One day, as Molly strolled blithely into the yard, flirting her long tail and chewing at a stalk of hay, Clover took her aside. "Clover's a girl?" "Molly," she said. "Fuck. Was that obvious in the first episode?" I did not know Clover was a girl. "Molly, I have something very serious to say to you. This morning, I saw you looking over the hedge that divides Animal Farm from Foxwood. One of Mr. Pilkington's men was standing on the other side of the hedge, and I was a long way away, but I'm almost certain I saw this. He was talking to you, and you were allowing him to stroke your nose. What does that mean, Molly?" "He didn't. I wasn't. It isn't true," cried Molly, beginning to prance about and paw the ground. "Molly, look me in the face. Do you give me your word of honor that that man was not stroking your nose?" "It isn't true," repeated Molly, but she could not look Clover in the face, and the next moment she took to her heels and galloped away into the field. A thought struck Clover. Without saying anything to the others, she went to Molly's stall and turned over the straw with her hoof. Hidden under the straw was a little pile of lump sugar and several bunches of ribbon of different colors. 3 days later, Molly disappeared. Damn, bro. So like Molly really out here like super attached to this like material idea of the ribbons. Like imagine how can we relate that to humanosity? What the fuck am I looking for? Anyway, real life. How can we attribute that to real life? So ribbons on a horse that was given to her by a human. So a human is the man. So what's something that the government or the oppressors have given humans that are very inconsequential, very superfluous, very not necessary, but people are still attached to? Do we think are we thinking holidays? Are we thinking jobs because they're tied to our healthcare and retirement? Are we thinking our houses and our possessions? What are we thinking there? 3 days later, Molly disappeared. For some weeks, nothing was known of her whereabouts. And then the pigeons reported that they had seen her on the other side of Willington. She was between the shafts of a smart dog cart. Smart dog cart? What the fuck would that mean in this context when this book was written? What is a smart dog cart? Is it for smart dogs? I don't understand. It's not like a smart TV. It's not like a smart fucking fridge. Phone is what I should have said. Smartphones are pretty common. A smart dog cart painted red and black. Hey, go dogs, bro. Double G, extra G for extra effort, baby. A smart dog cart painted red and black, which was standing outside of a public house. A fat, red-faced man in check breeches and gaiters who looked like a publican. Dude, I only understood like 39% of those words. Not really, I'm exaggerating. Check breeches and gaiters who looked like a publican? Is that, what the fuck is a Dr. Goo? Nah, we can't, man. It's gonna be a long episode. Shut up, Dr. Goo. Get out here. Oh, Dr. Goo. It's me. Hey, Dr. Goo, what the fuck is check breeches? Yeah, you don't know what check breeches are, you idiot? Well, why don't you just go ahead and look up the whole phrase for me before I start wanting to beat you up? Oh, okay. I think I could do that for you. What did you need, sir? Fucking just press paste. I already have it. Idiot. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Check breeches and gaiters. It's those fucking, dude. It's those. Now that I know what they're called, high key. These when little equestrian women be wearing these are sexy as fuck, dude. I'm glad I know what these are called now. Check breeches and gaiters. I'm about to type that into porn. Excuse me. And what the fuck is a publican? Why'd you close that, Dr. Goog, you piece of shit? So sorry, sir. It won't happen again. Publican, British, a person who owns or manages a pub. Man, that almost makes Republicans seem a lot cooler. I said almost. Fat, red-faced man in check breeches and gaiters who looked like a publican was stroking her nose and feeding her with sugar. Her coat was newly clipped and she wore a scarlet ribbon round her forelock. She appeared to be enjoying herself, so the pigeons said. None of the animals ever mentioned Molly again. Damn. Molly just, but that's what I'm saying about the pacing of this book. Like, there really wasn't any discussion or, description about the whole thing. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, yep. She was getting her nose stroked. Here's one paragraph about it, and then none of the animals mentioned her again. Bye. This boy ain't J.R.R. Tolkien, that's for sure. In January, there came bitterly hard weather. The earth was like iron and nothing could be done in the fields. Many meetings were held in the big barn, and the pigs occupied themselves with planning out the work of the coming season. It had come to be accepted that the pigs, who were manifestly cleverer than the other animals, should decide all questions of farm policy, though their decisions had to be ratified by a majority vote. By the way, this can still exist under socialism and communism, okay? You can still, the only reason that the Western society and America in general thinks that this can't work, this can't happen, you can't vote under socialism or you can't vote under communism, this is only because of the propaganda they've been told about it, right? Like, it's their version of what they think socialism and communism are that they're so against, which makes sense. I would be against that too, but that's just, anyway. This arrangement would have worked well enough if it had not been for the disputes between Snowball and Napoleon. These two disagreed at every point where disagreement was possible. If one of them suggested sowing a bigger acreage with barley, the other was certain to demand a bigger acreage of oats. And if one of them said that such and such a field was just right for cabbages, the other would declare that it was useless for anything except roots. Each had his own following, and there were some violent debates. At the meetings, Snowball often won over the majority by his brilliant speeches, but Napoleon was better at canvassing support for himself in between times. He was especially successful with the sheep. I wonder if that's supposed to be, that was clearly metaphorical, right? Although the sheep haven't really been, have they been made out to be what what modern day society thinks of sheep? Have they been, I don't remember them. Maybe not. Yeah, they couldn't really read or write very well. Maybe. He was especially successful with the sheep. Of late, the sheep had taken to bleating 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, both in and out of season, and they often interrupted the meeting with this. It was noticed that they were especially liable to break into 4 legs good, 2 legs bad at crucial moments in Snowball's speeches. Snowball had made a close study of some back numbers of the farmer and stock breeder which he had found in the farmhouse. I don't know anything about that book, never heard of it, so let's hopefully they go into a little bit more. Made a close study of some of the back numbers of it, which he had found in the farmhouse, and it was full of plans for innovations and improvements. He talked learnedly about field drains, silage, basic slag, and had worked out a complicated scheme for all the animals to drop their dung directly in the fields, at a different spot every day to save the labor of cartage. Napoleon produced no schemes of his own, but said quietly that snowballs would come to nothing and seemed to just be biding his time. But of all their controversies, none was so bitter as the one that took place over the windmill. In the long pasture, not far from the farm buildings, there was a small knoll, which was the highest point on the farm. After surveying the ground, Snowball declared that this was just the place for a windmill, which could be made to operate a dynamo and supply the farm with electrical power. This would light the stalls and warm them in the winter. Then we could also run a circular saw, a chaff cutter, a mango slicer, an electronic milking machine. The animals had never heard of anything of this kind before. I mean, the farm was an old-fashioned one and had only the most primitive machinery. And they listened in astonishment while Snowball conjured up pictures of fantastic machines which would do their work for them while they grazed at their ease in the fields or improved their minds with reading and conversation. All right, so now we're setting up the premise for automation and technology making not man, because fuck, complicated when man means the man and animals mean humans. Anyway, how automation and technology is going to make the workload of the workers, the animals, much easier, and potentially even increase production, right? So they're setting it up. They're laying down the premise. The plot thickens. Pictures of fantastic machines which would do their work for them while they grazed at their ease in the fields or improved their minds with reading and conversation. Within a few weeks, Snowball's plans for the windmill were fully worked out. The mechanical details came mostly from 3 books which had belonged to Mr. Jones. 1,000 useful things to do about the house, Every Man Has His Own Bricklayer, and Electricity for Beginners. Snowball used as his study a shed, which, again, he's doing that thing again. That thing is weird, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's a name for it, but I don't like it. Snowball used as his study a shed which had once been used for incubators and had a smooth wooden floor, suitable for drawing on. He was closeted there for hours at a time, with his books held open by a stone and with a piece of chalk gripped between the knuckles of his trotter, just out here fucking picking it up with his little... He would grip between the knuckles of his trotter. He would move rapidly to and fro, drawing line after line and uttering little whimpers of excitement. Gradually, the plans grew into a complicated mass of cranks and cogwheels, covering more than half the floor, which the other animals found completely unintelligible but pretty impressive. All of them came to look at Snowball's drawings at least once a day. Even the hens and ducks came and were at pains not to tread on the chalk marks. Only Napoleon held aloof. He had declared himself against the windmill from the start. One day, however, he arrived unexpectedly to examine the plans. He walked heavily around the shed, looked closely at every detail of the plans, and snuffed at them once or twice, then stood for a little while, contemplating them out of the corner of his eye. Then suddenly he lifted his leg and urinated all over the plans and walked out without uttering a word. I'm Team Snowball right now, man, but I think that's intentional. I think that's intentional. I think they want you to be Team Snowball right now. I don't trust neither one of them, if I'm being honest. You hear me? But that's cold, Napoleon. That's cold, bro, doing that to your pig brother. The whole farm was deeply divided on the subject of the windmill. Snowball did not deny that. To build it would be a difficult business. Oh, sorry, let me do that one again. Snowball did not deny that to build it would be a difficult business. Stone would have to be carried and built up into walls. Then the sails would have to be made, and after that, there would be need for dynamos and cables. How these were to be procured, Snowball did not say. But he maintained that it could all be done in a year. And thereafter, he declared, so much labor would be saved that the animals would only need to work 3 days a week. Napoleon, on the other hand, argued that the great need of the moment was to increase food production, and that if they wasted time on the windmill, they would all starve to death. The animals formed themselves into two factions under the slogan, vote for Snowball and the 3-day week, and vote for Napoleon and the full manger. Benjamin was the only animal who did not side with either faction. He refused to believe that either food would become more plentiful or that the windmill would save work. Windmill or no windmill, life would go on as it had always gone on, and that is badly. Yo, I'm Team Benjamin. High key. Fuck Snowball and Napoleon. I'm Team Benjamin. Apart from the disputes over the windmill, there was the question of the defense of the farm. It was fully realized that though the human beings had been defeated in the Battle of the Cowshed, they might make another and more determined attempt to recapture the farm and reinstate Mr. Jones. They had all the more reason for doing so because the news of their defeat had spread across the countryside and made the animals on the neighboring farms more restive than ever. As usual, Snowball and Napoleon were in disagreement. According to Napoleon, what the animals must do was procure firearms and train themselves in the use of them. According to Snowball, they must send out more and more pigeons and stir up the rebellion among the animals on the other farms. The one argued that if they could not defend themselves, then they were bound to be conquered. The other argued that if rebellions happened everywhere, they would have no need to defend themselves. The animals listened first to Napoleon and then to Snowball, and could not make up their minds which was right. Indeed, they always found themselves in agreement with the one who was speaking at the moment. At last, the day came when Snowball's plans were completed. I'm sorry. So what the fuck are we talking about here? That all this stuff was happening during this meeting, and then one sentence, it's a year later. At last, the day came when Snowball's plans were completed. Now let's talk about the windmill. That's why these chapters are so fucking long. Tits. Need more rum. At the meeting on the following Sunday, the question of whether or not to begin work on the windmill was to be put to the vote. Oh, okay. Oh, his plans were completed. Okay, I'm dumb. I'm the dumb one. You make fun of me now. Okay. At the meeting on the following Sunday, the question of whether or not to begin work on the windmill was to be put to vote. When the animals had assembled in the big barn, Snowball stood up and, though occasionally interrupted by bleating from the sheep, set forth his reasons for advocating the building of the windmill. And then Napoleon stood up to reply. He said very quietly that the windmill was nonsense and that he advised nobody to vote for it. He promptly sat down again. He had spoken for barely 30 seconds and seemed almost indifferent as to the effect that he produced. At this, Snowball sprang to his feet and, shouting down the sheep, who had begun bleating again, and broke into a passionate appeal in favor of the windmill. Until now, the animals had been about equally divided in their sympathy, but in a moment, Snowball's eloquence had carried them away. In glowing sentences, he painted a picture of Animal Farm as it might be when sordid labor was lifted from the animals' backs. His imagination had now run far beyond shaft cutters and turnip slicers. Electricity, he said, could operate threshing machines, plows, harrows, rollers, and reapers and binders. Besides supplying every stall with its own electric light, hot and cold water, and an electric heater. By the time he had finished speaking, there was no doubt as to which way the vote would go. But just at this moment, Napoleon stood up and, casting a peculiar sidelong look at Snowball, uttered a high-pitched whimper of a kind no one had ever heard him utter before. At this, there was a terrible baying sound outside, and 9 enormous dogs wearing brass-studded collars came bounding into the barn. They dashed straight for Snowball, who only sprang from his place just in time to escape their snapping jaws. In a moment, he was out of the door and they were after him. Too amazed and frightened to speak, all the animals crowded through the door to watch the chase. Snowball was racing across the long pasture that led to the road. He was running as only a pig can run, but the dogs were close on his heels. Suddenly he slipped and it seemed certain that they had him. And then he was up again, running faster than ever, but the dogs were gaining on him. One of them all but closed his jaws on Snowball's tail, but Snowball whisked it free just in time. Then he put on an extra spurt, and with a few inches to spare, slipped through a hole in the hedge and was seen no more. Damn! My boy Snowball got chased out of here. Fuck! Napoleon, you bitch. Silent and terrified, the animals crept back into the barn. In a moment, the dogs came bounding back. At first, no one had been able to imagine where these creatures came from, but the problem was soon solved. They were the puppies whom Napoleon had taken away from their mothers and reared privately. I think we all saw that coming, right? Well, not like when he took, I think when he, fuck. Talk better, dickhead. I don't think that we knew this was going to happen when he took the animals, but I think when they all busted in, it was pretty clear who they were. Fuck, that's... Though not yet full grown, they were huge dogs, and as fierce looking as wolves. They kept close to Napoleon. It was noticed that they wagged their tails to him in the same way as the other dogs had been used to do to Mr. Jones. Okay, so they're just making a little pitch to let you know that Napoleon is kind of working his way towards being the new Mr. Jones. That's just a little toss up for you right there. Napoleon, with the dogs following him, now mounted onto the raised portion of the floor where Major had previously stood to deliver his speech. He announced that from now on, the Sunday morning meetings would come to an end. They were unnecessary and wasted time. In future, all questions relating to the working of the farm would be settled by a special committee of pigs presided over by himself. These would meet in private and afterwards communicate their decisions to the others. The animals would still assemble on Sunday mornings, salute to the flag, sing the beasts of England, and then receive their orders for the week. But there would be no more debates. In spite of the shock that Snowball's expulsion had given them, the animals were dismayed by this announcement. Several of them would have protested if they could have found the right arguments, but even Boxer was vaguely troubled. He had his ears set back, shook his forelock several times, and tried hard to marshal his thoughts, but in the end he could not think of anything to say. Some of the pigs themselves, however, were more articulate. 4 young porkers in the front row uttered shrill squeals of disapproval. and all four of them sprang to their feet and began speaking at once. But suddenly the dogs sitting round Napoleon let out deep, menacing growls, and the pigs fell silent and sat down again. Then the sheep broke out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for nearly a quarter of an hour and put an end to any chance of discussion. Afterwards, Squealer was sent round the farm to explain the new arrangements to the others. Comrades, I trust that every animal here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking this extra labor upon himself. Do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is a deep and heavy responsibility. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would only be too happy to let you make your decisions for yourself. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades, and then where would we be? Suppose you had to decide to follow Snowball with his moonshine of windfalls. Snowball, who as we know now is no better than a criminal. He fought bravely at the Battle of the Cowshed, said somebody. Bravery is not enough. Loyalty and obedience are more important. And as to the Battle of the Cowshed, I believe that time will come when we shall find that Snowball's part in it was much exaggerated. So that's pretty funny. So like we've got the guy who's out here being like the messenger, and he's like, well, I'm sure that, you know, when the leaders at B write the history of the Battle of the Cowshed, then we'll really see where Snowball was at. You know what I'm saying? We'll write that one down for you. You know, that's just, it's funny. What did they say? If you only read the hunter's tale, then the wolf always dies. History is always written by the winners. And as to the Battle of the Cowshed, I believe the time will come when we shall find that Snowball's part in it was much exaggerated. Discipline, comrades. Iron discipline. That is the watchword for today. One false step and our enemies would be upon us. Surely, comrades, you do not want Jones back? Once again, this argument was unanswerable. Certainly the animals did not want Jones back. If the holding of debates on Sunday mornings was liable to bring him back, then the debates must stop. Boxer, who had now had time to think things over, voiced the general feeling by saying, "If Comrade Napoleon says it must be right." Did I read that wrong? I'm going to re-emphasize that. If Comrade Napoleon says it, it must be right. And from then on, he adopted the maxim, Napoleon is always right, in addition to his private motto of, I will work harder. It's a bad combination to have. How much more we got in this chapter? This is a long, okay, only 2 more pages. I'm about to say this is a long ass episode. I didn't think this chapter would be this long. The first 2 chapters were pretty short, but the other ones have been pretty long. That's what she said. What? Shut up. That was true. By this time, the weather had broken and the spring plowing had begun. The shed where Snowball had drawn his plans of the windmill had been shut up, and it was assumed that the plans had been rubbed off the floor. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the animals assembled in the big barn to receive their orders for the week. The skull of Old Major, now clean of flesh, had been disinterred from the orchard and set up on a stump at the foot of the flagstaff beside the gun. After the hoisting of the flag, the animals were required to file past the skull in a reverent manner before entering the barn. Nowadays, they did not all sit together as they had done in the past. Napoleon, with Squealer and another pig named Minimus. I wonder if that's like calling a big dude tiny, you know? Napoleon, with Squealer and another pig named Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for composing songs and poems, sat on the front of the raised platform, with the 9 young dogs forming a semicircle around them, and the other pigs sitting behind. The rest of the animals sat facing them in the main body of the barn. Napoleon read out the orders for the week in a gruff, soldierly style, and after a single singing of Beasts in England, all the animals dispersed. On the third Sunday, after Snowball's expulsion, the animals were somewhat surprised to hear Napoleon announce that the windmill was to be built after all. He did not give any reason for having changed his mind, but merely warned the animals that this extra task would mean very hard work, and it might even be necessary to reduce their rations. The plans, however, had all been prepared, down to the last detail. A special committee of pigs had been at work upon them for the past 3 weeks. The building of the windmill, with various other improvements, was expected to take 2 years. So now, what we got here is somebody who is taking advantage of the system that was put in place, but has these authoritative bourgeois sort of qualities to him, and he's becoming drunk with his power. So he had already ruined Snowball's plans, and now that he's had his pigs working on it, there's various other improvements. It's going to take twice as long, and he's prefacing this with, you're going to have to work hard. So like, we're going to see some real, in the next episode, expect some real big shit to change. This book, we're about halfway through the book right now, so we're about to really get into it. Climax, oh yeah, daddy. What? Who the fuck? Chris Brown, calm down, dude. Yeah, that evening, Squealer explained privately to the other animals that Napoleon had never in reality been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated it in the beginning. Oh boy. And the plan which Snowball had drawn on the floor of the incubator shed had actually been stolen from among Napoleon's papers. The windmill was, in fact, Napoleon's own creation. Why then? See, now this is too many commas. Why, comma, then, comma, asked somebody, comma. Why then, asked somebody, had he spoken so strongly against it? Now here, Squealer looked very sly. That, he said, was Comrade Napoleon's cunning. He had seemed to oppose the windmill simply as a maneuver to get rid of Snowball, who was a dangerous character and a bad influence. And now that Snowball was out of the way, the plan could go forward without his interference. This, said Squealer, was something called tactics. He repeated a number of times, "Tactics, comrades, tactics." Skipping around, whisking his tail with a merry laugh. The animals were not certain what the word meant, but Squealer spoke so persuasively, and the 3 dogs who happened to be with him growled so threateningly that they accepted his explanation without further questions. So everybody listening, I just want you to take a half a minute or two and just think about what you think these things represent, right? What do you think the dogs represent? What do you think Napoleon represents? And who do you think Squealer represents? Maybe not specific people, right? But I mean, we've all got these people. We've all met people like this. You know what I'm saying? It's maybe not met. That was the wrong word. But we're all aware of people who act like this. If you're in tune with politics or, you know, the socioeconomic climate of anything happening, you know what I mean? Like if you recognize anything that's happening around you and you're not just like sort of one of these ignorance is bliss types, right? Like we'll talk about it. We're definitely going to talk about it. We're going to go ahead and cut this one. We're fucking past an hour and a half already, but I guess that's just me making up for the fact that I didn't drop it on Monday. So, I love y'all. I want to make sure that we stay true to the fuck the man, fuck Mr. Jones. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, but that's really the fucked up slogan of it, right? Hi, Charlie. Did you know I was saying goodbye? Did you want to come see me? Hello, baby. Hello, cutie pie. The cutest cat of all time. I've been holding her and petting her like this since she was a fucking kitten. Comes to me for head scritches and a little cuddle every now and then. She puts her paws all. I hope you can hear me pretty well. Kind of far away from the mic, but I love my cat just as much as I love you. And if you want to see how pretty she is, you should see me on YouTube. That kind of rhymed, and I'm gonna stop before I look dumb. Bye. Say bye, Charlie. You know, y'all know you can't do that with your cat.